start.
No, no,
I know it's a boring topic, and it's a tough one to do at the end of the day. But
just a second, audience. I think you should listen to this because you will not get much teaching of electrophysiology elsewhere. Yeah, it's very difficult to learn from the books.
Okay.
I had listened to it in the iFocus. He makes it very simplified and makes any a beginner to make it understand. So please listen to it. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so I'll be start talking about electrodiagnostics. This is going to be, I'm going to go very slow. I won't mind if you stop me in between. I don't attempt to cover the whole of electrodiagnostics in this 25 minutes. If I'm able to cover one aspect of it nicely, I'll be more than happy about it if you all guys understand it nicely. So just quickly running through a few basic slides. Electrodiagnostics is just a kind of an ECG recording which records certain waves on a paper which comes from the membranes and the light induced, the resting potential of your retina and the light induced changes which happen. Why are we so keen to know about electrodiagnostics when we have such wonderful imaging modalities like OCT, FFAs? The reason being, all these tests that you have been hearing about till now are all anatomical tests. They really do not actually study the function of the retina, which is predominantly what? To catch the light and transmit into electric signals to your brain. So that functional aspect of your test is your electrophysiology. Another thing, all these tests do not actually try and pinpoint within the retinal layers where actually the problem lies, whether it is with the photoreceptors, the bipolars, the ganglions, which again is going to be helped out by your electrophysiological tests. So where do we typically use electrophysiological tests? We generally tend to use when our clinical symptoms and our findings are not matching with each other. We tend to use when we have some kind of an unexplained visual loss, unexplained pigmentary changes on the retina, patient complaining of symptoms such as night blindness, abnormal photosensitivities, central vision field loss, but still our fundus examination may or may not be 100% diagnostic in such situations where take the help of electrodiagnostic tests. So these are the multiple components of an electrodiagnostic test which we have with us. What I'll be try to cover in 20 minutes is going to be EOG, electrooculogram, ERG, which has pattern and flash ERG, typically the scotopic as well as the photopic ones, and just briefly about visual evoked potentials or the VEP. To understand electrophysiology, just remember this diagram, which is typically what we have our visual pathway, how the light flows through our eye to the brain. This is typically what happens. Light falls on the RP, goes through the neurosensory retina, optic nerve, chiasm tract, and into the visual cortex. Within the retina, this is what the anatomy of the retina is. So you have the RP, you have the macular area, the periphery, which has the macular area which has all the cones, the periphery which has rods and cones, going on to the bipolar cells and to the ganglion cells. Herein again the macular area. Can I have a better pointer, please? Okay, the macular area, which again has cones going to bipolars and to the ganglions. Important in this photograph, what importance it carries, I'll talk about later, but just look at this photograph and try and understand that in macular area, each cone has its own bipolar and its own ganglion cell. In the periphery, the rods and cones interdeteriorate with few bipolars and then even fewer ganglion cells. So just keep that aspect in mind. We'll talk about it in the later. So this is what our pathway now becomes. Light goes to RP, hits the RP. You have signals in the photoreceptors from which the current goes to the bipolars, the ganglion cells which form your optic nerve, chiasm tract, and then to the visual cortex. So this is how the pathway is. Remember, it's a serial pathway. It doesn't have any alternate channels. So the current can only flow in one direction. If this pathway is disrupted anywhere on this line, the further all the signals will not be there. So any test which checks for photoreceptors and the signal is broken after the photoreceptors, all the other tests which are checking for bipolar, ganglion, all will come out to be abnormal. Okay, so it's a serial pathway. You can't have any bypasses in this pathway. So just note down this slide. This is what all the tests are for. I hope by the end of this talk you are able to answer this, match the following on your own. Okay. For doing electrophysiology, there is a body called as International Society of Clinical Electrophysiology, which has given certain guidelines how to do these tests. And I'm not going into details of those guidelines, but you can go through them. And based on that, we do our ERG, EOGs, and VEPs. First, I'll start off with ERG. Okay. So for ECG, ERG recording also you need electrodes. So what electrodes are required? किसी भी current के लिए you need a positive and a negative, and so is for ERG, you need an active electrode and you need a what is called as reference electrode. So active electrodes are typically two types. You can have either a corneal or a non-corneal electrode. Corneal electrodes are placed directly in contact with the cornea. Non-corneals are placed in your lower fornix. They are like these wires which are placed in the lower fornix. Corneal ones are kept onto the cornea. With a corneal electrode, you will get better recordings, but with the non-corneal, it is much more comfortable for the patient. A reference electrode is typically placed on the outer canthus of the eye, and a ground electrode, like you ground any electric circuit, a ground electrode is attached to the ear clip using an ear clip electrode. Whatever surface you are going to use your electrode on, you just clean with the spirit swab and then put your electrode. This is how typically with a patient is, this is a patient who has a DTL wire electrode, that's the active electrode, the outer canthus, and then on the ear you have the ground electrode. This is how typically a patient is prepared for a ERG. And this is how a patient is prepared for a VEP. I'm showing it here just to finish it here, where the patient's surface is, the occipital area is cleaned off with the abrasive alcohol swab, and then the electrodes are attached. To record, unlike ECG where heart beats on its own, to generate signals within the eye you need stimulus. For stimulation you need light source. So you have two kinds of light sources. One is called a flashlight, which is typically given from this bowl kind structure called as Gansfield bowl. Why do you need a bowl? Why can't you just use a bulb? Anybody would like to answer that? Okay, I'll tell you, because our retina is not flat. Our retina is curved surface structure like this. So if you want each part of the retina to be equally illuminated, the flash also needs to shine in that same circular or the parabolic fashion. That's why you need to keep the eye in this parabolic structure or the Gansfield bowl, so that each and every part of the retina, when the flash shines, is equally brightly illuminated. Other than the Gansfield electrode, you can also use a pattern screen, which can either have a pattern reversal wherein the black becomes white and white becomes black, or a pattern on-off kind of a pattern depending on what kind of a test you are doing. So this is what is a pattern screen. So typically now let's try and draw an ERG. How will an ERG come up? So the light goes and strikes the RP. Sorry. Okay. So I'll try and see if it comes from here. Okay. The light goes and strikes the RP. The first wave that you get, the first signal that you get is a negative wave. That is the A wave of the ERG coming from the photoreceptors. The second wave which comes is the positive wave which is coming from bipolar cell. So how will you remember? B for bipolar. So B wave is coming from your bipolar cell. So the first negative wave, A wave, comes from your photoreceptor. The next positive wave comes from your bipolar cells. And subsequently, the current has gone to the ganglion cell. ERG is only studying these two aspects of the retina, the photoreceptor and the bipolars. It is not talking about the ganglion cells. Okay, so it only talks about photoreceptor function, bipolar function. ERG finishes there. For ganglion cell, you move on to the next test. Also, sometimes you get these small wavy forms on your ERG. These are what are called as oscillatory potentials. There are multiple other cells in the retina, the amacrine cells, which give these oscillatory potentials onto the rising B wave of a ERG. So A wave, but this is not very much used clinically. For clinical importance, remember the A wave from the photoreceptor and B wave coming from your bipolar cells. So what do we want to know when we do an ERG? We want to know whether my rod pathway is involved or my cone pathway is involved, whether my rod photoreceptor, rod bipolar is involved, or cone photoreceptor, cone bipolar is involved. So how do we try and differentiate? To do that, the ERG is done in such a specific way that each of those ERG tests only stimulates a particular cell layer of the retina. So we start an ERG. So first, this is how we typically do an ERG. We first make a patient sit in front of the machine. We start with a pattern ERG, which is done in a unilateral, undilated, full refractive correction ke saath, and it's a binocular recording. Then we dilate the patient. We dark adapt the patient for 20 minutes. By dark adapting, now whatever initial tests we are going to do are only typically going to pick up the rod pathways. Once we have done our dark adapted tests, then we move on to a photo adaptation or light adaptation for 10 minutes. The next two tests are going to pick up the cone pathway functions. So that's how a ERG is recorded. Remember, if you have to do a ERG, this is again a question which is asked in MCQs also. Whenever you're doing an ERG, if you have to do a fundus photograph or an FFA on that day, preferably avoid it. Or if you have done it, then at least wait 60 minutes before you do your ERG, because you would have actually bleached a lot of your photoreceptors in doing your fundus photography. So again, showing the pathway once again before we start doing the different tests. So these are the tests which are done. Dark adapted, you start off with the smallest flash and then slowly increase your flash intensity, and then you do 2 photopic tests. So this is the first test done. In the Gans field, we start off with the smallest light intensity, and what you get is a wave in which there is no A wave seen, only a B wave. This is the most best way to pick up the rod bipolar cells. You only see a B wave in this low flash ERG. As you increase the intensity of the flash, your A wave starts to come, and then you reach something called as the maximal combined flash ERG, which is the best place to see your A wave. So you see on a low flash the B wave, on a high flash the A wave. A wave tells you about rod photoreceptor, B wave will tell you about rod bipolar cells. Then you do your oscillatory potential test, and then you're photo adapted, and then you do a single flash cone response, which talks about a small A wave from the cone photoreceptor. And to study the cone bipolars, we do what is called as flicker frequencies. If the flickers are good, that means the cone bipolars are working fine. So this is how the 5 tests are done, and this is how a typical ERG printout will come to you, where you will have a low flash, a maximal flash, an oscillatory recording, a photopic single flash, and a flicker recording, which will each of them tell. This will tell you B wave of a photoreceptor, A wave, the A wave of a cone, and a B wave of a cone. Add to this, we also do something called as pattern ERG. Pattern ERG is done, as I said, with full refractive correction. It is to assess the macular function, whether your macula is working fine or not. If the pattern ERG wave has 3 components, as you can see, N35, P50 and N95, the P50 is coming from macular photoreceptor. So if you have a P50 at 50 milliseconds, that means your macular photoreceptors are working well enough. N95 comes from ganglion cell. So N95 talks about ganglion cell function. But then you would say, why ganglion cell function only from macular or a pattern ERG that we are looking at? Remember the previous diagram where I showed you? Look at the ganglion cell. Most of the optic nerve is made of ganglion cells coming from the macula. The periphery contributes very little to in terms of number of ganglion cells. So if your macular test is picking up ganglion cell function, that is good enough in terms of overall ganglion cell optic nerve function, because 95% of ganglion comes from macular area. Now let's try and do a few examples on this ERG, whatever we have learned. Okay, so what I'm going to show is a few typical ERGs. Let's try and interpret each of them. On the left side, I have put the normal ERGs for you. This is a patient who presents to us with this kind of an ERG. What do you make out? In a low flash, no B wave. In a maximal flash, no A wave from the rods. Photopic ERG, again flat, flickers, again gone. You're comparing it from each of these from the normal. Okay? So rod function is not there, cone function is not there. So what disease is this? Achromatopsia would be only cone gone. It's a rod cone dysfunction. Now if you look at the pattern ERG, There is no pattern waves also. So it involves the macula also. So this is a rod cone photoreceptor dysfunction involving the macula, typically seen in a retinitis pigmentosa with macular involvement kind of a patient. Compare this with another patient. This is the fundus photograph, which is very typical, but look at the ERG. Again, no rod functions, no rod bipolars, very poor rod cone photoreceptors. Some amount of cone waves you can make out, some amount of cone bipolars you can make out. Pattern ERG still is pretty good. Yes, so this is a rod cone dysfunction, but luckily with a macular sparing. So you can have an RP with a macular sparing. That kind of a picture will present with this ERG. To complete RP in patients who are X-linked recessive retinitis pigmentosa with severe RP, the carriers of those patients, the female carriers, they typically have otherwise a normal looking ERG, except on the flicker frequencies, the amplitudes are quite decreased and latencies are increased. So that's a classic, just an MCQ question on X-linked recessive retinitis pigmentosa. What will be an ERG for a carrier patient? Okay. So this is another patient's ERG. Again, those 5 ERGs, all flat in a young boy, moderate to severe vision loss, sluggish to poor pupillary responses, nystagmus in a 2-year-old child. Total flat ERGs with poor pupils, nystagmus, poor visual, moderate to severe visual loss. Case of, iske abhi very recently treatment for this has just come up. Yes, this is a patient of, somebody said LCA, Leber's congenital amaurosis. Pupils gone, nystagmus is a typical feature, clinical feature along with ERG that you have to look at. So these are the conditions which will present with a non-recordable or an extinguished ERG. Moving ahead, look at this. This is a patient, 20-year-old, visual acuity 2200, color vision defective, photophobia. Pattern ERG, that is from the macula, is gone. You have photoreceptor responses from the, that is IRR is the reduced response. So bipolar, rod bipolars are working. Rod cones you have some function, but rod photoreceptors you have some function, but cone responses are totally gone. So rods are somewhat there, but cone response is gone, macula gone. This is a patient of, what is it? It's a patient of cone dystrophy or a cone rod dystrophy, which typically also presents with bullseye maculopathy. Just go back and look at the ERG again. So pattern ERG gone, macula is mainly cones. Some amount of rod function is coming, but cone function totally gone. So this is a patient of cone rod dysfunction or cone dystrophy. A similar patient a similar kind of a picture also comes in a disease called as rod monochromat, which again rod monochromat is a patient who has only rods, he doesn't have cones. So if he doesn't have cones, his cone functions are going to be totally lost. Typically he presents with clinically as congenital nystagmus, which over a period of a decade stabilizes. That's the clinical history that comes with this. Okay, now look at this. Again, the normal on your left side, the fundus photo showing some kind of, if you can make out, cystoid kind of a pattern. Can you look at the ERG and describe it? There is no bipolar wave coming from rods, but a good A wave coming from rods. How can that happen? Photoreceptors are intact, but bipolars are abnormal. And if I use the word cartwheel pattern at the fovea, if the bipolars and photoreceptor have split from each other, what is the condition called as? Retinoschisis, right. So when they split from each other, the current cannot go ahead. So you have a current coming from the photoreceptor, but nothing coming from the bipolar cells. So this is a patient of, this is called as dysfunctional phototransduction. It's a patient of X-linked retinoschisis. A very similar feature is also seen in something called as congenital stationary night blindness. These are patients who don't have bipolar cells for rods. So they're abnormal. There's no split, but their bipolars are abnormal. This kind of an ERG which you see, sorry, this kind of an ERG which you see is called as an electronegative ERG, where you have only a negative wave but nothing positive going. And it is typically seen in CSNB, X-linked retinoschisis, and one acquired condition also, which is, can anybody tell me X-linked, which acquired condition have a electronegative ERG? Remember, there are two blood supplies coming to the retina. The photoreceptors get their blood supply from choroid, and the bipolars get their blood supply from the central retinal artery. So if your central retinal artery is gone, the bipolar won't have any blood supply, so they go and you will have a electronegative ERG. So CRAO you can differentiate from an ophthalmic artery occlusion. If you have an ophthalmic artery occlusion, your choroidal supply is also gone, your photoreceptors are also gone, so you will have a flat ERG, while in a CRAO you will have a electronegative ERG. Okay. Quickly coming to the central area, these are conditions which only involve the macular area, like Stargardt's and pattern dystrophies. In this, the gross ERG is normal. What is abnormal is your macular pattern ERG. Only the macular area is involved, your P50s are abnormal, but your overall gross ERGs are normal. Okay. Quickly, I have 3 minutes to complete EOG. Any questions on ERG, or should I complete EOG quickly? I think I'll rush through the EOG. Now, EOG is, till now we have not looked at the RPE of the retina. EOG is doing that. It is looking at whether the RPE is functioning properly or not. To do that, we do something called as electrooculogram. It has two components, the light insensitive and the light sensitive component. And this is how you typically place your cups on either side. You dilate the pupil, you have a ground electrode on the earlobe, and you have electrodes kept at the medial and the lateral canthus. There is no stimulation that you're doing here. And there are 3 light sources in the bowl that are lit up, and you ask the patient to move his eye from one to the other. It's 15 degrees apart on either side. By doing this, what you're doing is you're making the RPE move on either direction, changing its resting potential status, which is recorded by the machine in a light insensitive phase and a light sensitive period. And what you typically get is a recording like this. There's a trough which happens in the dark, and then a peak in the light, and this is how you record it, and you measure the ratio for it, which is called as Arden's ratio, and it is typically how much? How much should be a normal Arden's ratio? 1.8. So 180% rise. When it goes to light, you should have a 180% rise, or 1.8 should be your Arden's ratio. And which disease in which it goes down? Yes, so very typical patient of typical egg yolk kind of pattern at the macula. The Arden's ratio reduced significantly compared to the normal, which is there down at the bottom left. That's a patient of Best disease. Lastly, VEP. VEP, you have two components, the pattern and the flash VEP. VEP is a more neuro-ophthalmological topic to be covered in detail about localization, but I'll just briefly cover. Again, you can have a flash and a pattern VEP. Flash is more like just you shine the light on the retina and you are seeing some recording happening in the brain. It just tells whether the whole pathway is grossly functioning or not. It is mostly used when you are trying to check whether this particular patient has some kind of a visual pathway function or not. It cannot really localize any lesion. It just tells, okay, if I start the current at point A, it is reaching the end point. It doesn't help localizing the lesion. Pattern ER VEP is more specific in that ways. It is more useful in picking up conditions like optic neuritis and demyelination. Again, looks very similar to pattern ERG, but the waveform here which we are very interested in is the P100. The P100 is the wave which we are very keen to know, because any kind of a demyelination disease, it kinds to delay this P100. P100, why is it called as 100? Because it comes at 100 milliseconds. it getting delayed significantly is a sign of delayed conduction through the optic nerve. Important you have to remember is both pattern VEP and pattern ERG are very sensitive to, they're very low voltage responses and very sensitive to fixation and visual acuity. So patient should have a decent amount of fixation on the pattern. If the patient is not fixating, he is not refractively corrected, you will not get good responses in both pattern VEP and pattern ERG. So just to sum up, the last slide which shows what each component is meant for, and